This is coming through. Can you hear me back there? Yep. So welcome to the final round of the University of Texas at Austin 3MT competition. I see all of our contestants who have done this before. All of them did this yesterday, competed yesterday. We have selected 11 of them who are now finalists. One of them will walk away with some money. Actually, 3 of them will walk away with some money. One will walk away with more money than the others. I also want to say welcome to everybody who's online and watching. How many of you guys have family, friends, colleagues that are logging in to watch? Okay. And for those of you watching online, at the end of the competition, right after the competition, the last presenter goes, we will open the online voting for the People's Choice Award. All of you, and we will have it up on the screen, how to do that. You just need your phone. I assume you could do it on a computer, but you will need those things, and it'll be 15 minutes. And the recipient of the People's Choice Award will receive $500. So be sure to pay attention toward the end of the competition. Let me go over just a couple of housekeeping notes. First of all, I want to say that we have our official photographer, Nick. Nick will be wandering around. Don't let him distract you presenters. He knows kind of where to go and where not to go, but this is an open forum, so your picture will be taken, okay? Other than that, I want to thank everybody for coming. This is a nice crowd. I see people that have helped us along the way that I want to say thank you to. All of those who have helped us with the trainings, we've had several trainings throughout the fall semester. Many of you may recognize some of these folks, but I see my friends from the libraries here through the dry runs. I see Annie Maxfield back there from our Professional Development Center. So can we just give all these folks a hand for their work? I also see some judges from yesterday who couldn't get enough. They have come back to cheer on their favorites, although they're not going to tell you who they are. So thank you guys for coming back again today. And thank you all if there are faculty here who are coming out to support their students or friends or classmates. Thank you all for being here. And mostly, I should say this, I want to thank Danielle Toma back there. If you haven't received an email from Danielle about this competition, then you actually haven't been involved with it, because she sends all kinds of stuff. So Danielle, thank you for all of your organization. You made all this happen. So this is why we're here, of course. But we are here at the end of the night or afternoon. We will actually be awarding the prizes: $1,000, $750, and I mentioned the $500 earlier. And we have to thank for that the Graduate Coordinator Network. They're sponsoring not only the prize money, but also the trip to the regional competition and the hotel. So thank you to the Graduate Coordinator Network and all the coordinators that are here. We appreciate that. Thank you very much. You know, the contestants know this, the judges, we talked about it. So I'm not going to really spend a lot of time on the overview. For those of you at home who this is your first time tuning in, you can go to the Graduate School's website, and in the search bar you can just type in 3MT and you will get these things that I'm going to talk about. I just want to remind everybody of some very important rules. Contestants, you know this already. Audience, you may or may not know this. It's 3 minutes, and we're very strict. There's a big clock in the back. David is running the clock, and if you hear the bell sound, that means you stop talking. And so if we have issues with the clock, you'll hear the bell, you stop talking, we will reset the clock, and then you'll start again, okay? Hopefully that won't happen, but it does happen sometimes. When that hits all zeros, you will hear the bell. My advice is just stop talking before it hits all zeros. You will be disqualified if you go over the 3 minutes, okay? So pay attention to that. Your time starts as soon as you make a movement or as soon as you speak, okay? just like in the past competitions. And I just want to take a minute and ask any of our contestants if there are questions or anything that's not clear about the rules. You guys know how to do this. That's why you're here. You're very good at it. And the judging criteria, we're going to let the judges introduce themselves in just a moment, but really at the end of the day, we want you to communicate well, and at the end of this, we want you to make us excited about what you're doing. All this will be online. There will be videos of this. You can use it for your job search. Annie Maxfield loves that. You may maybe get a funding opportunity out of this. You never know who's watching the presentation, so engage us, communicate well, be articulate, and make sure that you explain what you're doing and you get us excited about that. Okay? And that's more of the same. So putting that up there just for due diligence. So we are very fortunate to have some judges today that have agreed to do this voluntarily, and I would like for you to meet them by letting them introduce themselves. So I'm going to start over here with Mose. I'm just going to pass the microphone and let them say whatever they would like.
Hey everybody, my name is Mose Buchel. I'm a reporter at KUT. It's the NPR station here in Austin, and communicating complicated ideas in a kind of easily digestible way is part of what I do, so I'm really looking forward to being a part of this. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Christine Sinatra. I'm the Director of Communications for the College of Natural Sciences. Want to wish good luck to everyone. We really appreciate you taking the time to think about how to make your research accessible for everyone who needs to know about it.
Hi, my name is Anthony Dudo. I'm an associate professor in the Stan Richards School of Advertising and Public Relations here at UT. I'm also the program director for science communication in the Center for Media Engagement here at UT, and I spend my entire professional life researching and teaching and thinking way too much about science communication. So it's a real privilege to be here today.
Hi everybody, my name is Shahareen Abedin and I'm the Director of Communications for Media Relations at Dell Medical School. I feel like I've read a million research studies, but being able to boil it down to something that people can really grasp and understand and giving it color, that's a true art, and I salute all of you for being here today and putting your hat in the ring, and good luck to everybody.
Yes, thank you. I should mention that one of the rules is that the judge's decision is final. Whatever they decide, we'll agree with. So that's all the intros we have today. So let me say how this is going to work, and then we'll get the competition started. Your name will come up on the slide just like it is. When you see your name, please come down. I will put a microphone on you. When you're ready, wait until I give you the signal to start, because we want to make sure the judges are ready. Judges will do this as a signal. I'll ask you if you're ready. You just give me a thumbs up, and then we will move through the competition. As you know, it goes very quickly, okay? So I just want to wish everybody the best of luck today, and let's get started. Okay, judges, are you ready?
When you think about satellite data, you think of pictures, like something when you hit the satellite button on Google Maps. But modern sensors capture so much more than we see with our naked eyes, a whole continuum of wavelengths. And modern scientists use that information to analyze ecosystems, detect heat waste, and classify everything from crops to military vessels. Or they would. In an advancing technological world, data sets are only meaningful if they are manageable, and data like this can get too big to store, let alone process. This opens up a vital area of research called dimensionality reduction, basically making a smaller, more manageable data set that can be used as a proxy for the original, larger data set. Now, there's actually a solution to this problem. The best case proxy you can get comes from something called principal component analysis, or PCA. But the question is, how do we compute principal component analysis if we can't ever store the whole thing in memory and we can't ever work with it all at once? Well, my advisor and I have come up with a new algorithm that adaptively computes principal component analysis in a data stream. And to help you guys understand how this works, I want you to envision an all-you-can-eat buffet, okay? There's an overwhelming amount of food, and you only have this little plate to capture as much of the spread as you possibly can. So what do? Well, you go row by row and dish by dish, and you update your plate with a little bit of this and that. We essentially do the same thing with something like this satellite data. So we go pixel by pixel, and we sequentially update our data plate without ever having to store the whole thing in memory. Now, the thing that makes our algorithm particularly unique is that it is adaptive, which means that it's aware of what we already have in our data plate, and it's also aware of how much each new component is going to change things. Kind of like you would at an all-you-can-eat buffet, go dish by dish. But the problem is, prior to my work, the standard technique was to essentially go through the buffet 1,000 times with 1,000 different plates and then evaluate every single one of those plates to decide which one was the best one. Very inefficient. My algorithm is much more efficient in terms of both storage space and time because it essentially only requires one plate and one pass through the buffet to get something that really represents this principal component analysis very well. But the question is, how well? How close is what we have computed to that original data set? And this brings up what my current research is trying to establish. We are trying to obtain mathematical guarantees for exactly how close our solution is to the original data set. And the reason why this is so important is, well, consider what this kind of thing is used for. What if you're using satellite imagery to send a missile? You can't say, oh, this algorithm works most of the time. You need to know exactly how good your information is. And that is exactly what my research is establishing now.
So judges, there was 1 second remaining. So during this lull time, yesterday we talked about maybe having some music and we couldn't find any. So we would certainly welcome anybody who plays an instrument just to whip it out and give us something to do in our 1 to 2 minute downtime between speakers. So. Okay, judges, when you're ready, if you would just give me a thumbs up so I know we're ready for the next one. Okay?
I'd like you to imagine a time when you were a child in a museum with dinosaur bones and exhibits of humans, early humans, in their spaces, doing the things that they do. And I would like you to think back, did you actually wonder what happened when the lights went out and everybody went home? What happened? Did they come to life? Well, one movie franchise decided to make a film about it based on a book in 2006, and we have Night at the Museum. And in this movie, we have a hapless security guard. And the security guard discovers that there's a curse in the museum, and all the animals and exhibits come to life and wreak havoc in the museum. Well, Museums like fundraisers because they need money. And one of the fundraisers that they've started to do are overnight trips. You can see them in zoos, museums, aquarium, and even the USS Lexington down on the Texas coast. One museum in particular that I work with is the Whitty Museum in San Antonio. This is their logo for their overnight event called Midnight at the Museum. One thing I do like about their logo is there's some comparisons and some parallels between the two. There's a cowboy in both. You've got a Robin Williams figure on the left-hand side and a cowboy on the bottom of the right one, as well as some dinosaur bones, because the Whitty Museum does have dinosaur bones. And so more real-life museums are doing this, but we're not seeing an uptick in research with this uptick in events. And so that's why my research questions are important, is I am trying to categorize and explain these events to put them in the research base. And my primary research question is, what happens? What is the learning that happens in this space? And to find that out, we needed first-person perspective of the children who were spending the night in the museums. And we got that by taking GoPro cameras and putting it on their chest or on their head so we can capture their real life, in the moment, conversations, gestures, everything in that space. We also did staff interviews, family interviews after the events. And while my findings are preliminary, what we're seeing is a very crucial difference between the two types of events that are happening. One of them is a very scripted event. It goes as planned. You walk in, they know exactly what they're going to do. You have no choices. The other is co-created. And the degree of co-creation we're finding lines up and correlates with the amount of money that you have available to spend. If you have lots of money, you can curate perhaps, maybe, a better learning experience. We don't know. So that is where we're going with this. We want to find out, do these co-creative events, eventually, hopefully, do they actually mean a better learning experience or not? And that's all I have to say. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Even more so today. Thank you.
Okay, judges, you look contemplative and ready. So is that good? All right. All right, so we welcome John. There you go.
25% of Americans have a fear of public speaking. That's almost 82 million people. And that's a shame because communication is so important, especially in the corporate and the academic worlds. It turns out it doesn't matter so much what you say, is how you say it. And that's what my research focuses on, how you say it, specifically with regard to filler words. Words like and If I said a filler word every other word, it would make my presentation less clear, less concise, and less engaging. But people don't use filler words on purpose. Oftentimes, they aren't even aware they're using them. And that's the problem. I used to play a game in high school where I'd sit in a circle with a group of friends, and anytime someone said a filler word, someone would clap. Make some sort of auditory cue to make that person more aware. And once you're more aware, you can start listening to what you say. You can reduce the number of filler words you say over time. But the problem is, you can't have someone following you around clapping every time you say a filler word. But I thought, what if you could make a computer program that could do this? A sort of virtual public speaking assistant that you could practice with. And anytime you say a filler word, it would tell you in real time. Speech-to-text systems aren't new. You can pull out your phone right now you can go into your Notes app and you can speak into it. And it'll write down everything you say. Well, almost everything. Everything except for filler words. It filters those out because you don't want filler words to appear in your transcript. So all of these commercial already made systems won't fit the bill. So I decided I need to build something more custom. I decided to frame this problem as a wake word problem. A wake word is a phrase like, hey Alexa, or okay Google, something you usually say to get a smart device in your home to start listening to you. And I thought, why not use similar technology to listen for filler words? So I found a data set called the Buckeye corpus. This is a data set of conversational speech. People talking back and forth, just having conversations. And in those conversations are filler words. In this data set, it's carefully labeled, so each word has a timestamp, the start and stop. I took all this data and I fed it into a neural network. A neural network is a piece of software that can learn patterns. It takes all this data, it hears where the filler words are, and it can look in the audio itself and figure out what makes that a filler word. After training this model, it turns out it does really well. It's able to recognize around 90% of the filler words said. And furthermore, this doesn't just work for English. This can work for other languages as well. In Japanese, eto and ano are the filler words that are analogs to and a. And this model can be trained to work on those filler words as well. I love public speaking. And my hope is that those 25% of people who are a bit afraid of it can use this tool to practice, to increase their confidence, and begin to love public speaking too. Thank you.
How we doing, judges? A couple more minutes? Good? Okay.
3D printing has received a lot of media attention in recent years, advertised as a disruptive technology that will revolutionize modern manufacturing. But despite the hype, one thing is clear about 3D printing today. While it is extremely useful in making plastic models and prototypes, it has failed to deliver on the grand promises shown in the media. So researchers, along with industrial partners, primarily in the aerospace and automotive sectors, are seeking to change that. In the field, 3D printing is called additive manufacturing, to represent a growing desire in moving away from making cheap plastic models and toward being a viable manufacturing option for production-ready parts. So what is stopping us from achieving that goal? Well, there are a variety of additive manufacturing processes, but in general, parts are built from the bottom up as a stack of many individual layers. Each slice of the part must be melted and resolidified before the next slice can be laid down on top of it. The layers in additive manufacturing lead to two main issues that are preventing it from gaining widespread adoption in industry. The process is time-consuming, and the parts are weak. This is where microwaves enter the picture. The microwave oven was invented to drastically reduce the cooking time for food compared to a traditional oven. Microwaves work by rapidly vibrating the water molecules inside your food using electromagnetic radiation. This rapid vibration creates heat, and since the microwaves can penetrate to the center of your food, it can be cooked all at once, whereas a traditional oven cooks from the outside in. So how can this be used to our advantage in 3D printing? Well, most plastics do not heat up in a microwave. You've experienced this if you've ever microwaved your leftovers in Tupperware. The food gets hot, but the container doesn't. However, plastics can be combined with other materials that do heat up in a microwave, just like the water does in your food. By carefully placing these other materials into a plastic powder, we can precisely control which regions will heat up and melt together to make a part. And so my project is doing exactly that through a new process that I'm calling radio frequency additive manufacturing, or RFAM for short. As the name implies, RFAM uses radio frequency radiation, which works just like microwaves but at a slightly different frequency. So in the same way that food can be cooked much quicker in a microwave than in an oven, RFAM can create parts much faster than traditional 3D printing methods. RF allows us to melt the entire part at one time instead of melting individual layers. So not only is the process faster, but the parts have the potential to be stronger as well. Early studies have demonstrated that it is possible to make parts using this method, but there's still a long way to go. I fully believe that additive manufacturing will reshape how we make parts in the future, and RFAM brings us one step closer toward that goal. Thank you.
No, you're good.
Okay, judges, how we doing? We good? Okay, you're on.
Can any of us in this room imagine a life without electricity? No, right? When I go home in the evenings, I like to cook a meal on my electric stove, put the dirty dishes in the dishwasher, maybe cool down my room so that I can sit and relax on my couch and watch some Netflix, or actually work on my dissertation as I'm supposed to. Maybe some of you have similar evening routines, right? But if all of us go home and do those things at about the same time in the evening hours, that creates the need for a lot of electricity in our homes. With population growth, urbanization, and climate change, the demand or need for electricity in homes all over the world has been increasing. To provide this electricity to customers like you and I, electric companies have to keep building new power plants to generate the electricity, as well as new power lines to transport the electricity from the power plants to our homes. This process is very expensive, in the order of billions of dollars. And some of these expenses ultimately get reflected in our monthly electricity bills. And if there's not enough electricity to meet our needs, that could mean multiple rolling blackouts in the incredibly hot Texan summer months. My dissertation uses a novel method to analyze the combined effect of load shifting, solar panels, and batteries on reducing peak residential electricity demand. Load shifting refers to shifting the usage of certain appliances, like charging an electric vehicle or running a dishwasher, to times of the day other than the peak evening hours, or programming our thermostat to pre-cool our homes in the afternoon so that once we get home from work, we don't have to blast our air conditioning systems. Some electric companies offer high prices in the evening hours and low prices at night to encourage this customer behavior of load shifting. In addition to load shifting, we can also install solar panels on our rooftops and use those panels to produce electricity during the day when the sun is shining. Some of that electricity can also be stored in batteries to be used at night or on cloudy days when the sun is not shining brightly. My research shows that time-varying or dynamic electricity prices can reduce peak load. However, they might have the negative outcome of encouraging all customers to shift usage of majority of their appliances to the low-price nighttime hours, thereby creating a second peak in these low-price hours. Further, my research also shows that although the price of residential batteries is still very high at the present time, we can and should be investing in solar panels which together with load shifting can help us reduce peak load, keep our electricity bills low, and prevent outages or blackouts. Thank you.
Ready?
Dallas police officer Amber Geiger was sentenced to just 10 years for the murder of Botham Jean, a black man. In the moments following her sentencing, Geiger was hugged by Botham's brother Brant John and comforted by the presiding judge, a black woman, who offered Geiger her own personal Bible. On Twitter, these events sparked outrage, which of course catalyzed pushback. The central concern at the heart of this conflict is why black people, who are unceasingly targeted by state violence, are expected to meet such treatment with restraint and compassion for those that harm us. Let's be clear. The consideration shown to Geiger would have never been shown had the roles been reversed. This courtroom coddling of a convicted felon is but a strange symptom of the philosophies of the colonizer, philosophies that are contained within the Bible the judge offered Geiger, a Bible which has historically been a tool of social control. But haven't we, as colonized people, developed our own opposing philosophies? And if so, where can they be found? Let's move to Atlanta. This city is known to be the nation's black mecca, yet poverty and violence still run rampant in a space where wealth is highly concentrated. And for black folks, attaining financial security or getting on primarily consists of participating in the drug trade and hoping you live long enough to make a hit record. Keep your head on a swivel, trouble looking around the corner, run up on you any minute, you'll be gone. I know people dead out of desperation. R.I.P. my brother Allen, man, I wish you would have stayed at home. Learn to make the best out of bad situations, no complaining, no more Zen, I'll leave the medicine alone. Dog, I swear to God that I'm changing for the better. F whoever got the nerve to try and tell me that I'm wrong. These are the lyrics to Swivel, a track from Atlanta rap duo Earth Gang. I analyze these lyrics as a cultural studies scholar. This is possible only because I am a lifelong fan of Southern rap. From first listen, I noticed that what was being articulated here is a philosophy of, for, and by colonized people. The first two lines are an acknowledgement that to be a colonized individual is to be expendable in the eyes of society. Because trouble is inescapable, the value of life is diminished. Any minute, you'll be gone. But there is a shift in the second half of the hook. To make the best out of a bad situation means to harness the wisdom honed by our impoverished and dehumanized ancestors, allowing for a sense of autonomy and self-preservation to develop. Thus, the last line of the hook is a complete rejection of the philosophies of the colonizer. Understanding that the philosophies that allow us to live and thrive are located within our cultural contributions, my work outlines philosophies of, for, and by colonized people so that we may begin to heal the wounds of this nation and ourselves. Thank you.
Okay, judges, we ready?
7 million people living in the central U.S., including you and me, are now in danger of earthquakes. The earthquakes that are triggered by us. By us, I mean the petroleum companies. You guys are cool. In 2009, the petroleum industry started to use a new method of extracting oil from the reservoirs called fracking. It was faster, stronger, and more efficient. However, the chart behind me shows that we had a gigantic jump in the number of earthquakes exactly the same time that this technology was developed. Why? Because in fracking, along with the oil, you get tons of wastewater out too, which is not very useful for petroleum companies. So what they do is to put the wastewater back where they found it, injecting it deep in the ground. When the water is injected close to a fault, it can cause the fault to move, and then boom, an earthquake happens. Here is an example of how one of these earthquakes destroyed a building in Oklahoma. That could very well happen to our homes. Needless to say, our structures and homes in this part of the country are nowhere near being ready for these earthquakes, since we never had to deal with them. So how do we deal with this ticking time bomb without knowing when, where, and how it's going to go off? What if we could predict their intensity before they happen? What if we could predict their potential damage beforehand too? If we had that knowledge, we might have been able to save that house. We might be able to save thousands of lives, millions of dollars in the future. Well, I may have some of the answers to these what-ifs in my research. Regarding the intensity, I developed a model to predict the severity of the earthquakes on the horizon here in the central US. The model shows that these earthquakes could be even more severe than what we expect in California, the infamous earthquake capital of the US. As for the potential damage of these earthquakes, I created computer models to see how different types of structures like homes and bridges behave during these earthquakes. One of the test results indicates that a single moderate earthquake with magnitude of 5.8 in Dallas could cost $200 million of loss to highway bridges alone. It's almost half of the state's annual budget for constructing new bridges. So I proposed a calculated method to identify the most susceptible structures to this imminent danger. By identifying and retrofitting them, we can prevent these earthquakes from becoming catastrophes with a minimal cost. I'm excited that my research is now being used by the Texas Department of Transportation. It's my hope that this will encourage my peers and people in decision-making positions to get more involved in solving the earthquake problem, which actually is a danger for all of us. Thank you.
Okay, judges, are we all ready?
If you don't stop, I'm going to send you to Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith, can you take him? Can you just deal with him? Mr. Smith is an African-American teacher who was frustrated by the fact that he was solely seen as the on-site disciplinarian for black boys in his school. As a former teacher who was treated similarly, I wanted to know why so many other black male teachers were enclosed in this perception of being harsh disciplinarians rather than the complex intellectuals that I knew them to be. What I found is that black male teachers remain entangled in pathological research from the 1960s. This racially biased and misleading research reported that families with absent black fathers produced bad black boys that became problems in schools that needed to be dealt with. As a result, society has become conditioned to see that the only purpose, the only value in black male teachers is in their ability to deal with those black boys. So why is this a problem? First, it reduces black male teachers to an extension of the carceral state in which their sole purpose is to serve as disciplinarians of black boys. Second, it shifts the responsibility of socio-historical and systematic school dysfunction onto the shoulders of black male teachers alone. And thirdly, it eviscerates the ability to think of black male teachers as critical intellectuals and serious professionals within the realm of education. This is where my research comes in. My dissertation seeks to reconstruct narratives of black male teachers by disentangling them from these pathological notions to reveal and recognize the complexity of the individual. So let's return to Mr. Smith. When I interviewed Mr. Smith about why he wanted to become a teacher, why he wanted to work with black boys, he said nothing at all about having a desire to be a disciplinarian. Instead, what he spoke about is coming downstairs on Saturday mornings and how much he enjoyed sitting watching the History Channel with his father. He talked about how much he enjoyed hearing his grandmother share stories about growing up in the Jim Crow South. He described going on family vacations to Jamestown and Williamsburg, Virginia, where he saw where the Powhatan Indians lived and former enslaved plantations used to exist. He talked about how much he enjoyed hearing his pastor, who was also a teacher, weave in African American history throughout his sermons on Sunday afternoons. This is why my research is so significant. It seeks to do something with the creation of black male narratives that few others have done over the course of sociological and educational research. Humanize. Thank you.
We ready?
What if I were to tell you to picture the author behind this book? You might picture someone older, respectable, distinguished perhaps. After all, who else would choose to bind their book in black leather with gold decorations? What if I were to tell you that this book was a holy Bible? Regardless of what you think of the contents, you might be picturing authors who are ancient and authoritative enough to have their ideas transmitted throughout history. What if I were to tell you that this book contained fan fiction, a genre of literature characterized by its use of characters, plot lines, and other story elements from previously written works? You might picture someone younger, immature, certainly less trustworthy than the original author you had in mind. What if I were to tell you that this book contained ancient biblical fan fiction? What would you think of the author then? That was the exact question faced by Johann Albert Fabricius, a 19th century German scholar who collected ancient stories about Jesus and his disciples in which they went new places, met new people, and did new things, but they weren't in the traditional biblical text as we know it today. They contained talking animals and cannibals, but through it all, Jesus and his disciples carried the gospel message to new places. Johann Albert Fabricius knew that these stories were worthy of study and preservation, but he didn't want to call them Bible.
So he put them into a different book and called them Christian Apocrypha instead, and that distinction has had severe ramifications for the study of this literature throughout the centuries. The authors of these texts have been characterized as everything from misguided fools to dangerous heretics set out to destroy Christianity. My work recasts these authors not as dangerous heretics, but as fans who cared enough about the traditional biblical text to rework and rewrite and remix those stories into new stories of their own. Now, modern Christian Apocrypha scholars already use fan fiction as an analogy in their undergraduate courses, but what they don't know is that fan fiction studies is uniquely positioned to handle stigmatized literature and authors. Remember the fan fiction author I asked you to picture at the beginning of this presentation. Fan fiction authors are frequently seen as inferior to and less authoritative than traditional ones. So fan fiction studies must work against those biases in order to take the stories and those authors seriously as subjects of scholarship. Authors of the Christian Apocrypha face similar assumptions of inferiority. And so my work seeks to destigmatize this literature and this entire body of authors through the use of fan fiction studies. Thank you.
Okay, are the judges ready?
We are all afraid of getting cancer because cancer is so hard to cure. Cancer treatment is complicated and has terrible side effects. Side effects occur when cancer treatments damage healthy cells. This raises the question, can we selectively target cancer cells? We need a decision-making tool that can say yes when it finds a cancer cell and say no when it finds a healthy cell. There are many molecular clues that allow us to differentiate cancer cells and healthy cells. Since these clues are at the nanoscale level, we need devices at the nanoscale level. These requirements bring DNA to our attention. There are a couple of reasons why we like to use DNA. First of all, everyone has DNA. DNA is biocompatible and is at the nanoscale level. Secondly, DNA is commercially available, and smart drugs made of DNA could be affordable in the future. Finally, we understand a lot about the interaction between DNA molecules, so we can manipulate them. Researchers have built various molecular devices using DNA, such as DNA computers that can perform square root computations, or DNA robots that can move along a pre-built track and make decisions to sort cargoes. This all looks very fascinating, but there is one big problem among all these smart DNA systems. They make errors. We don't want our molecular devices to make the wrong decisions. To solve this problem, my thesis topic is about developing a systematic method to eliminate errors in a variety of DNA systems. Typically, an error occurs when two DNA molecules that are not supposed to interact collide with each other. In the system that I built, I added an extra component. The extra component works like a lawyer and a jury in a trial. Every time two molecules falsely interact, the lawyer sends the evidence to the jury. The jury does not decide on guilt based on only one piece of evidence. It decides on guilt only after multiple pieces of evidence are presented. Under the monitor of the jury, an error in my system requires multiple layers of false interactions. This reduces the probability of error. Using this design principle, we can reduce error to any desirable levels. How do we do that? Just ask a lawyer to present more and more evidence. This design principle can be applied to many different DNA systems. In the future, when we have a smart DNA drug that can selectively target cancer cells, it will make less errors. Thank you.
The universe. It's beautiful and full of mysteries. It was created roughly 14 billion years ago through a massive explosion called the Big Bang. Right after the Big Bang, our universe was hot, dense, messy, and filled with many, many small particles. As a particle physicist, I want to know what those particles are and what role they have played in shaping the universe in the form that we know it in today. But there's a catch to that. Most of these particles, especially the most interesting ones, aren't just sitting around the corner. In order to create them, we have to reproduce the same high energy environment that they thrived in. And to accomplish that very purpose, we have built the largest machine on Earth, the Large Hadron Collider. It is a 27-kilometer long underground tunnel that is situated at the border of France and Switzerland, housing 4 gigantic experiments that all are trying to discover some physics that is not found in the textbooks. I work with one of them, the Atlas experiment. Inside our detector, we take very high-speed particles and collide them with each other. Out of this collision comes out a shower of particles, as you can see in this picture. Every line that is coming out of the center of this picture represents a particle created in one such collision. But that's just one collision. At a rate of 40 million such collisions every second, we have gathered a amount of data over the last 4 years. That's roughly about 3.5 million HD movies on Blu-ray discs. My job is to comb through this data very carefully and look for signatures that might be representative of signatures of new particles. But there comes a second catch. How do I know what the signature of a new particle may look like? Well, we have a very established theory of the particles that we have already discovered. And using that theory, we can do very powerful computer simulations that will predict the behavior of the collisions inside our detector. We take our data and compare with the results of the simulations. If the data pretty much looks like the same as we can see in our simulation results, well, that's bad luck. We probably haven't found anything yet. But if our data varies significantly from what we see in our simulations, eureka, we have found a new particle. That new particle just might be one tiny little piece in the missing puzzle of the universe. And if I find in my research one such particle, I'm just going to look right into its eyes and ask it, how you doing? Thank you. You have to help me.
Wow, I told you it'd go fast, didn't I? Let's give all of our contestants a round of applause. Contestants, you can exhale now and we will be announcing the winners in this room about 3 o'clock. So that's about a little over an hour from now. So if you are not going to be present, you may want to tell Danielle so she knows. And we want everyone here and at home to go and vote for your favorite. This is the People's Choice Award. It's on the graduate school website. This will be open for the next 15 minutes. So please go and vote for your favorite presenter on the People's Choice Award. I will now take the judges out and we will make some decisions and see you back here about 3 o'clock.